Welcome to another edition of Points of Interest, brought to you by the Lebanon Area Chamber of Commerce. My name is Paul Boucher. I'm President and CEO of the Lebanon Area Chamber of Commerce. And as we do each week, we provide you with a calendar of events of what's going on in the Upper Valley for the week and have interesting guests. This week we're going to stray away from that format a little bit, and we're going to honor as best we can, the three of us, Ray Burton, who recently passed, Ray, County Commissioner from Grafton County, and also on the Governor's Council. And with me today is close friends of Ray, who we're just going to reminisce about our experiences with Ray and some of the stories that we can talk about Ray and the great things he did for Grafton County and for the state of New Hampshire. To my right is Michael Cryans, who is the County Commissioner, who served as County Commissioner along with Ray, and Frank Klim from Service Credit, who was a close friend of his during campaign and driving around during campaigns, and we'll have some stories for us also, and myself personally also. Start off with my first experience with Ray was when I took over as President and CEO of this Chamber of Commerce almost 15 years ago now, and it was a big party to well wishes to my predecessor, Jim Wexler, who had served the Chamber 22 years, and an announcement of my taking over his position here at the Chamber. And Ray was one of the attendees, I always said Ray always jumped out of bed running in the morning with all these activities. But Ray was there to congratulate Jim on his retirement and to personally offer his help and assistance to me at any time that I needed it in the Chamber or other issues that affected the state or that type of thing. And also my assistance to him, if anything I could do for him in certain areas. And over the 15 years, he kept his promise. He's been a guest on this program a number of times, keeping us abreast of what was going on in the county, not only in the county, but with the Governor's Council and the things going on there. And over the years has always been a big help to me, and hopefully I was to him also. So Michael served with him a number of years on the county commissioners, and any stories you'd like to relate?
Sure. Well, I'll start as you did with your first meeting with Ray. My first time was down on a political event, and actually I was running in a special election for the state senate, because our state senator had passed away, and I met Ray and had heard of him, but he wasn't quite as famous as he has been recently, because that was back in 1981. And a couple minutes later he said, "You forgot something." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "When you shake hands with somebody, you always ask them for your vote." And I've sort of tried to keep that in mind when you run for political office, to always reach out and ask that person for their vote, because people do like to be asked. And it was a good reminder, but Ray had a few years of experience at that point, and certainly wanted to get his point across that that was an essential ingredient to running for political office. I happened to notice the Valley News, and they had a cartoon that ran in the Littleton Courier, in which they shows St. Peter and Ray at the pearly gates, and I'm not sure I can take all the credit for that little cartoon, but I can tell you a story that I relayed at his funeral, and because I was asked by the family to speak, and Ray and I were sitting in his hospital bedroom, and he was probably in the last month of his life pretty much, and it was one of those evenings, lights were all off and it was quiet, and I'd come back, I'd represented him up in Whitefield receiving an award from the North Country Council, and he said, "Mike, do you think I've lived a good life?" And instead of just saying, like so many of us, "Yes," I said, "Ray, none of us know how we'll be judged. But if we're judged based on the number of people that we help in our lifetime, someone at the pearly gates is going to yell to you, 'Ray Burton, you come to the front of the line because you've helped so many people.'" And I'm amazed, I mean, especially since he's passed away, the number of stories that have surfaced of people that he has helped in so many different ways. I knew he was constantly helping people, but I'll give you one quick example. I was at headrest. A friend of mine had called and he said, "Is Ray's obituary in the paper?" And I went downstairs into the kitchen, and one of our clients said, "Did I hear you say Ray Burton passed away?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Oh, he's done so many wonderful things for us in the North Country," and she cited 2 or 3 examples. And you know, here's somebody out of the clear blue at headrest, just to volunteer the wonderful things that he has done for her. So I'm sure out of the 265,000 people that live in the district, probably a lot of interesting stories there.
Frank, I know you go way back too.
Well, my first time I met Ray was 1978, the year that he didn't win.
Oh.
78,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And I had met him in the bank, and he came into the bank, and he asked a couple of questions. What do you have? What do you do? What do you tell him? And he said, "I'd like your vote." I was living in Enfield. And he said, "I like your vote, and here's my card." And he said, "Would you know, if you ever need anything, or you know?" And I said, "Well, if I could ever help you out, let me know." About 2 weeks after, it was a Saturday morning, knocking at my door, and I look out on the porch, and I said, "Who's that?" You know, and look out there, and it was Ray.
At your home?
Yeah, at my house, and he was at my house, and he said, "I'm going to the dump. Do you want to go?" And I said, "What?" He said, "I'm going to the dump. Do you want to go with me?" And I said, "Okay." So we went to the old Bog Road dump in Enfield, and he talked to people as they brought in there.
He was campaigning.
And, you know, and I met some people, there were some people I knew, and we were there for an hour and a half, went back to my house, and sitting there, and I said, "I didn't know that people went to the dump." And he goes, "There's a lot of votes in the dump." He said, "You gotta hit the dump." So, okay. So, that was the first time I ever met him, and, you know, ever since, we did some interesting things, and I made a lot of, when he started doing the mixers, when he started doing his mixers, and he would have call lists to call people, to let them know that he was gonna have the mixer. And we were somewhere, and I was starting to make some calls, and he said, "You have to remember that you have to say, there is no donation required. You can come here, whoever you are, and just come in and talk," and he said that, "no donation required." I mean, I can't think of how many of those calls I made. And I would oftentimes make calls to people who, say, you know, may have sent him something or something, especially people in the hospital. And he'd say, "Well, you know these people." He said, "Why don't you call them and see?" And he said, "Here's an answer to, you know." And he'd always ask me, I'd call back, and I'd say, "Well, I talked to so-and-so," and I'd relate the conversation. Then he'd say, "Were they satisfied?" And I said, "Best I can tell." He said, "Well, you'll always tell," he said, "because they may hang up." So that, you know, that was, the dump was the beginning, and then all through the middles, different stuff in the middles. But and you know, personally, I've told Mike this and some people. I mean, when my son was very ill, I couldn't get anywhere. I didn't know where to go, and showed up one day and said, "We're going to go to Concord. I know I have to talk to someone. We have to talk to this person, and we did, and it really pulled stuff out that I couldn't pull out myself, and it made access to talk to people who actually listen, and you know, so to me that was always, as a personal item, that was the most important thing to me, because without what happened there, my son probably wouldn't be here today.
He had a campaign slogan, if you will, he's carried over the years, was like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was like, always run like you're losing, or what was the?
He always used to say he was 2 or 3 votes behind.
Yeah, even when he was on a boat.
And I chuckle when I hear Frank mention that he didn't like, you know, he didn't care if people paid enough, because he was a prolific fundraiser.
Yes.
And for that race, he always raised a large chunk of money. And in fact, one time I was invited to be one of the speakers at a roast for him to raise some money up in Littleton for the Littleton Boosters Club. And so I sort of, you make up stuff, and I pretended like I was stopping at Barbara Ashley, who was his fiscal agent, and like she gave me an envelope, and I stuck it in my pocket. And when I get up there, I said, Barbara asked me to read this. I pulled it out, and it says, "Dear friends of Ray Burton," which he always used to have friends of, "effective tonight, I will not be accepting any more campaign contributions. My coffers are running over. In fact, if you gave me a check, I will be returning it tonight to you." So I go on and on. Everybody knows Ray's prowess in raising money. He's chuckling, and I look down, and I notice he's just sitting there. And I realize there's certain things you just don't joke about. But
And Ray worked, besides his two positions as on Governor's Council and County Commissioner, he taught school. A lot of probably didn't
he
realize
was
that.
taught at Springfield College in St. Johnsbury, Vermont. And there was, he certainly had a number of things to do, but he was very good at time management. And,
Busy all the time.
Okay.
All the time busy.
Oh, yes, as I say, he'd get out of bed running in the morning. Of course, probably all of us were on his weekly emails that showed his schedule for the week. And I just, get tired looking at, his schedule. How can he do it?
Well, and I think to show you that point about time, how he's busy and stuff like that, one time we went to the hospital together to visit someone. And we're walking out, and he said, "You made a mistake." I said, "What did I do?" He said, "You took your coat off." He said, "You take your coat off, and I think you're going to stay a while."
Oh.
I mean, that was his, and I don't think it was demeaning to the person he was visiting, but he, in other words, don't plan on going in there and spending an hour and a half or 2 hours. I want to stop, I want to visit, but I can't, And, when you look at the size of the district, which is enormous, it stretches from basically in this area down to like Newport, Claremont, going across to Laconia, all the way now, it is 7 touches. It's all of Coas, all of Grafton, most of Carroll, most of Belknap, most of Sullivan, a little bit of Merrimack, and a little bit of Stratford. So the 10 counties in the state. So it is almost 200 miles from Newport to Pittsburgh. I mean, that's a huge district. And there's 265,000 people, but unlike Manchester, where you grew up, which is most of the people within a little tiny area, you've got this map that's this big. And he used to take us a 5-4 map. He'd fold one fold, and the other 4 were his. And and there's miles between one stop and the other. Yeah. And in fact, that same roast, I made up this little story that, but it hit to the point. And Bernie Streeter, who was a longtime executive counselor, had stepped down, and one of the young reporters came running into the executive council and said, "Mr. Burton, do you know you're now the dean of the executive council with the retirement of Bernie Streeter?" And he said, "Son, come here." He led him out into the hallway in the state capitol, and there's a map that runs about 10 feet, and he holds his hand up about 2 feet off the floor and waves it from Laconia to Pittsburgh. And he says, "Why do I want to be dean of the executive council when I'm already king of the North Country?" But that was his title, because he had done so much. And I mean, I think it was a title given in respect, for all he has done. And, I had the good fortune of riding with him up to the event at the Mount Washington. And, 5 minutes before we left, he didn't want to go.
This was 2 weeks before he passed?
It was actually, he died on 11/12/13, which is one of those auspicious days that we can always remember. That was November 1st, and he turned to me. I was sitting on the couch with him, and there were 2 or 3 others in the room that were going to go out. And he looked at me and said, "Mike, I don't want to go." He said, "I just don't feel up to it." And I said, "Ray, it's up to you." But I said, "A lot of people are expecting you." And the governor was going to be there. Both the United States senators were going to be there. Many people in the state government, but also people in all different walks of life. He said, "I just don't feel up to it." So about 5 minutes ago, "Let's go." He stood right up, and we had to help him because he was so weak, and got him out to the car, and another guy that was there volunteered to take him in his much more comfortable vehicle. And he said, no, I'd rather ride in my parade car.
Yeah.
And so he got in that old car, and, which I said sometimes like riding in a wheelbarrow, you know, you're bobbing back and forth. And they get up there, and with about 2 miles of the Mount Washington, he instructs Paul to pull over. Paul Johnson was his driver. Paul gets out and puts the flags in,
Yeah.
puts the top down, and because it was a beautiful day, but it was cool. And all of a sudden, it was like, it was almost like something out of a Ben Hur movie. The skies parted. Yeah, it was cloudy and rainy all the way up. It was a beautiful day. We drove up the long driveway at the Mount Washington, and he got in a wheelchair. He was pushed into the room. The 4 other executive councilors were there with the governor, and many people standing around. And he was in his element. He talked about things that happened 30 and 40 years ago. One guy stood up and mentioned something, and he turned to Governor Sununu and he said, remember, John, when we were, you helped me on that issue, you know, and then somebody else, and Lou D'Alessandro, who had gone back with him 50 years or whatever, you know, they reminisced about stuff like that, and, you know, it was just all those moments. And then went across the street and had the wonderful dedication of the Overview, which is, you know, a beautiful big stone monument that will be remembered for a long, long time. And you could see him fading. You could see him fading. And at the end, got him into the car. Literally, Paul and I lifted him up to get him into the back seat. And he laid down. And 2 miles later, he was sound asleep, and he slept from there all the way back to Bath. And it was almost like, you know, being a long distance runner, it was almost like he had willed himself across the finish line in the marathon. But once he hit the finish line, he was done. And he never really was. Not that he was in great shape before, but he was never the same after. You know, he was in that constant decline.
Did you ever ride in the DeSoto? Did you ever ride?
Was
in
this the yellow
No,
vehicle?
white and,
Red and white, right?
Oh, okay.
no, it's white and like a teal color.
Yeah.
Greenish.
Okay.
And
No.
it's huge. I think it was 53, 56.
57 DeSoto.
DeSoto. The
Yeah.
thing was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I loved riding it. And
Yeah.
he pulled it one day when we were talking about how we were going to build the new David's house
Oh.
at Dartmouth Hitchcock. We were up on in Hanover.
Hanover, yep.
And he had said to me somewhere along the line, he said, but, you know, I don't know what I can do, but, you know. So I said, well, stop by the house. So we stopped by the house in the DeSoto with the sign up.
Oh.
With the sign up. And, you know, he's walking to come in the house, and people are coming off the street to see, what is this? DeSoto? And they're talking to him, but, well, you know, Ray Burton. And one of the folks that came up said, well, do I give you the check for the house? What do I? He said, oh, no. He said, you have to give that to Frank. He said, and we went in, and it was a really interesting, because he said, what do you want me to do? Not like some, you know, I can do this, I can do that. What do you want me to do? And I said, well, he said, that's from anything. He said, what if you want me to stuff envelopes? He said, whatever you want me to do, I'll do. And so, you know, we found a number of, what we needed was help in northern New Hampshire, where our group really didn't know a lot of people. And of course, Ray knew people. And, you know, we spent endless trips up to the North Country, and he'd say, this is so-and-so, this blah, blah, blah. And I met so many people, and those people got the sense of David's house, and, you know, and became supporters and visited the house. But that never, I mean, you didn't have to ask. I really didn't have to ask him to help. It was just, I'll come over.
Matter of fact.
But came over to DeSoto. I
Yeah,
loved that. That was marvelous.
I remember the yellow vehicle is
78.
78 of them.
Oldsmobile.
Just most recently, well, within the year, when they reopened the bridge over Mescoma Lake.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
he and the Crates, Don Creighton and Evelyn, and he drove the car as they drove and waved across. I mean, that was, you know, and any parade or whatever we had. And he never missed, as long as I've been here 15 years, he and you, attending my home life show. That was a tradition. 1 o'clock, I knew, on Saturday afternoon. Michael and Ray would show up and tour the show and walk around. But he also had, you know, different pet things, some that I was involved in. Every year he did his fly-in. And what he would do, he'd start at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning at the Concord Airport, and hit all of the airports in his district. And we kept in touch via phone in the plane, and Claremont then us, and every year, and what's going on here? How can I help you with this airport? And I'm sure he said that to everybody, but he was, and if you asked him a question about a certain thing, you call Janet Flynn
Yeah.
or Debbie
Yeah.
something or other at this department, and her or his number is. Not only do you know the person, the department, he knew the phone number.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought
I
that
was struck at one of those airport meetings one year. I would meet him over there. I didn't fly to all the different places, and they were talking about the number of calls that were coming in through the tower. And it was just one of those things. I said, now they must count all of the helicopter ones. The guy says, geez, I don't think we do. And I said, why don't you? And he said, I'm gonna check it out. And they ended up being able to count those.
Count
which
those
helped them.
for-
But it was just one of those, I mean, I think Ray didn't mind other people getting involved. It wasn't like, you just step back, I'm gonna
Yeah,
do
no.
everything. He encouraged people. One thing that I've always been struck about Ray is, and some people have this ability, some do not, is you could walk into, first of all, as a county commissioners, we have 3 desks in this room that used to be, I think, the operating room for the nursing home at one point. And it's got a beautiful big glass window and it looks out. And there's 2 stories that are tied to this. And one of them is that when you walk in there, Ray would be at his desk returning numerous phone calls. And he could be literally talking about a major appointment for a government position, Health and Human Services or something like that, or a Supreme Court Justice or a Superior Court Justice. And I'd say, Ray, it's time we gotta go back into the meeting, because our meeting started at 9 o'clock. He'd walk in, the first thing he would ask our farm manager, how's the health of the herd, or how the chicken's doing? And it sounds, trite in some ways, but I found it as a phenomenal skill that he could be talking about something as consequential as this for the state, and yet do this. And one thing he reminded me, and I think it's worth reminding all of us, is that sometimes what seems minor for one person is a major thing. He would say, somebody would call up and ask me to do such and such, and I could move that through the government. And I always say to him at the end, I can't tell you you're going to like the answer you're going to get, but if you don't get an answer,
Right.
make sure you get back to me. And he would say sometimes, I know I am the last person that somebody's going to be able to turn to. And really, I think that was a responsibility he took seriously. And sometimes it'd be like, I want to get a crossing that says moose crossing here, or a bird thing, or what you'd say, geez, do you really want? And I always love it because he would call. Ray's way of doing it was, and after 36 years, he could do this pretty easily. He could pick up the phone and call the head of DOT and say, I know somebody that wants to get this bird crossing here, or moose crossing, whatever. And obviously, he's going to pass it down probably 7 or 8 times. But Ray didn't call the 8th person down. He would call the top person, and then he would say to that person, if you don't get an answer, you let me know. And I've seen him call back. And one of my more recent things, and I'll just end on this so you guys can all chime in, he was asked to do something, and it didn't go the way he thought it should have. And he picks up the phone and he said, do you want to take another look at, no, he's talking to one of the most senior people in the state government, do you want to take another look at that? Instead of just saying, I want it done, just take another look at it. And the person called back a short while later and said, Mr. Burton, it's all set.
I think at heart he was an educator, and when my son was home for endless months with surgeries when he was young, and Ray said, how's he doing and stuff like that. So one afternoon I came by, and there, my son on the floor of our house with trucks, and Raymond reading a book to my son. To my son.
Yeah.
And I came in and he said, I had a few minutes, I was coming by, but he was, I think, the education, I had a young fellow that worked for me, Whitey, that Ray, strongly recommended, had no experience, but he knew him, and he knew inside of him that, and he was a great employee. So, and I think, he valued that education. We would get books at our birthday lunches and dinners. We'd get books for him, history books. He loved books. So I think he was convinced that people, you know, to be educated was the key.
He was convincer too. I remember when I first took over this job that now Grafton County Economic Development Council
Yeah.
was being formed. And he called me and said, you know, you gotta be on that. He said, you're gonna be representing the chamber, da, da, da. And then there was an opening on a statewide basis. It's called the American Canadian French Cultural Exchange Commission.
Well, you got that one.
I got that one. I had to be bilingual, and so he said, I know Boucher, you know, he must be able. So, you know, but he was convincing. You have to do that. I mean, it's almost like, you know, I mean, he could ask me to walk 10 miles, and I would have said
Sure.
yes.
Yeah.
You know, it was out of respect for him.
And one of the last things that happened, he had called, Paul called me, his driver, and said, I'm up in Bath. Would you mind going to the DHMC and pick up Ray? This is one of his last trip to DHMC, which he didn't get good news after that, unfortunately. And so I go down and pick him up, and we're driving along, and he said, that place is a restaurant, right? And I said, yeah. I said, but you don't want to stop there. He said, well, I want to get you and Julie a dinner. I said, "You're not gonna get me a dinner." He said, well, you're going out of your way. I said, they will have eaten. Don't worry about it. So we drive, you know, going up Route 10. We go up a little bit further. There's another that was like Peyton Place. Now we go by Ariana's. He said, pull in there. And I said, Paul's got dinner for you. Julie will have fed Connor and eaten already. Don't worry about it. We get up to Woodsville, Haverhill Park. And he said, can you pull into Aldridge's? I said, sure. So I pulled into Aldridge. I said, what do you need? Because I knew I had to get out and get it for him because he was so weak. He said, go up to the gas station. I said, do you want to get me gas?
Oh,
And he said, yeah. I said, I know, because you've been dying on this food for a while. But the funny thing is, we get out, and he hands me his credit card, and I said, Ray, you don't have to do this. I said, I'm doing it because I'm your friend. He said, I know, but I wanted to do it. You know, it was making him feel good.
Yeah.
So he hands me the credit card, and he said, and don't put $20 in it, fill it up. But, you know, he just, I mean, I think, you know, we have so many of those stories, and, you know, I think the sad part of it is, the loss has created a huge void, because for a while now, we've gone from being so well served, and not having anyone there. So, you know, all those people that look for constituent service, no one is there. Those people that should be advocated for positions, no one's there. You know, so that's the big part. And it'll take, no matter who the person takes his place, it'll take a while to get them up to speed.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for sharing with us today
thanks.
in the passing of a great friend of all three of us, and he'll be sorely missed, and his shoes will be hard to fill. So that is another program of Points of Interest, and we'll be back next week with another edition. Until then.